Okay, Rabbi, so let's get started. I hope you had a lovely Yontif. The marathon continues with Shabbos. Okay, so the Mishnah yesterday had presented us with a machlokes between the Chachamim and Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka. The machlokes is as follows. Does a man, a testator, have a right to reapportion the Yerusha in any way he pleases so that he awards all of the Yerusha to one heir and excludes other heirs? And the Chachamim say he does not. He has to divide things according to the laws of Yerusha. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka says he has every right to reapportion the estate as he wishes. So this is the machlokas. So now the question is, Boi Rava, Bibori Heich. So now the question is, what's the law by a healthy person? Meaning, does this halacha only apply? Rav Riskin, Shalom Aleichem.
Welcome. Thank you very much for
Welcome. Are we meeting today?
If we can, that would be one of the wishes.
So that's fine. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so the question is as follows. When Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka declares this ability for a testator to reapportion the estate, is it only when the person is a shchiv meira on his deathbed, or does it apply even if the person is perfectly healthy and he's got years left to live? Can he write up a will, as it were, and say, I want son X to get 3 times as much as all of the other kids, or I want him to be the exclusive heir? And the way that the Gemara speaks out the shaila is like this: Ki ka'amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka b'shchiv meira debar orosihi hu avol bibori lo odilma afilu bibori nomi. Perhaps Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka only allows a shchiv meira, a person on his deathbed, to reapportion the estate. And why is that? Because if you remember from yesterday's daf, what was the whole source text for Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka to allow such a reapportionment? It was based on the pasuk of V'haya b'yom hanchiloes banav, that on the day that a person gives over the Yerusha to his children, and from that pasuk he learned HaTorah nasna reshus la'av lahanchil l'chol mi sheyirtzeh, that the Torah gives permission for a father to reapportion the estate to whomever he chooses. But the way that the pasuk is written, it sounds like it's on the day that he's giving over the Yerusha, which means he's on his deathbed. Or perhaps that's not the correct way to look at the pasuk, and therefore even a healthy person can do so. So Amar le Rav Misharshia l'Rav Tashma. So Rav Misharshia says, let's look at the following brisa, and we'll be able to answer the question. Da Amar lo Rabbi Nasan l'Rebbe. Shenisim Mishnaschem ki Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka. That the Brisa records that Rabbi Nasan was a contemporary of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. He lived in Bavel, and Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi lived in Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi Nasan was very influential in the way that Rebbe wrote his Mishnah. It's almost like Rebbe used to consult with Rabbi Nasan in the way that the Mishnah should be organized and should be taught. Rabbi Nasan made an observation to Rebbe, almost an observation sort of, I'm surprised that you did it this way. He said, I noticed that you organized the Mishnah in Maseches Ksuvos, and you paskin in that Mishnah like Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka. Ditnan. Because what does the Mishnah in Ksuvos say? Lo kasav la benin dichrin dahavin leich minoi inun yarsen kesek ksuvasayach yosr al chelkeyon de'im achuhon chayav shetanai based in hu. So the Mishnah in Ksuvos says as follows. There is a special rule that when a man gets married and he gives his wife a ksuva, let's say it's a second marriage or a third marriage, he already has other children. Chazal wanted to provide an incentive for fathers to marry off their daughters. And the concern was that fathers had is that if I give over my daughter and I give her a dowry and I let her bring in assets into the marriage, the concern that's going to occur is that what happens if she dies? Her husband will inherit her and all of her assets, and then when he dies, he'll distribute the assets not to only the children that he has from my daughter, but he'll distribute the assets to all of his children. He may have many more children from a previous marriage, and it'll turn out that all of the family assets that I've given to my daughter will end up being lost from our family line. So Chazal made an accommodation as follows, that when a man gives his wife a ksuva, one of the things he has to write, and one of the line items that he has to guarantee his wife is that if, it's called ksuvas benin dichrin, he says to her as follows, if you die before me, then all of the assets that are contained in your ksuva, both what I have to pay to you, plus the assets that you bring into the marriage as well, I guarantee that will be given above and beyond the portion that our sons will divide with my other sons. In other words, let's say I have 5 sons already, and you and I will have a 6th son. So normally that son would be entitled to a 1/6 of the estate. However, I'll make a special arrangement that whatever cash value is contained within the ksuva, that will be given above and beyond the 1/6 of the estate. Now, this is done at the time of marriage. And Rabbi Nassan says, I notice, Rebbe, that when you teach this Mishnah, you're going like Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka. So, Va'amar lo Rebbe, and Rebbe's response to him was, now, why is he noting that this is going like Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka? Well, for very obvious reasons. Because what's happening is that a man is reapportioning the inheritance so that instead of all of his children getting an equal amount of the Yerusha, he's giving this 6th son more than 1/6 of the estate. So you see this goes like Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka. So what was Rebbe's response to Reb Nassan? Va'amar lo Rebbe yaspun tanan. That Rebbe said, no, you misunderstood my teaching. This is not being given over to a son as a Yerusha. It's being given over to a son as a matana, as a gift. It's not happening as a Yerusha. So therefore you cannot adduce that this Mishnah goes like Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka. Va'amar Rebbe yaldus haisabi vehe'asti panai b'nasan habavli. So then Rebbe had remorse after he taught this to Reb Nassan. He said to him, he made a declaration publicly. He said, I was acting childishly. I was being childish when I responded to Reb Nassan. Notice my knee-jerk reaction was to become defensive when Rabbi Nassan sort of stated in almost a critical way that why are you paskening like Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka against the Chachamim? And my response was, well, I'm not paskening like Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka because it's not a Yerusha, it's a Matana. And then Rebbe says, you know what? He really was right. I was acting childish. In the reality, I was paskening like Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka. He says, Ella dekaimulan benin dichrin lo tarfa mimishabdi. He says, and my proof is that this is a Yerusha and not a Matana. How do I know that Reb Nassan was correct? He says, because when you think about it, if this was acting as a Matana at the time of marriage that I'm gifting to my future son that I'm going to have with you, the value of the ksuva, so then at what time does that gift take place? It happens immediately upon marriage, which means that if the man will later sell off portions of the estate, that's considered to be encumbered property that the giftee, namely the unborn son, would have rights to collect from. But we know that that's not the case. We know that even with ksuvas b'nindifferent accommodation, the unborn son, when he collects the value of the ksuva, can only collect it from unencumbered property that was not sold off previously. And that proves that it's a Yerusha, not a gift, because if it was a gift, then he's first in line to collect anything that was sold off of the estate after that fact. So that proves that Reb Nassan was correct, and Rebbe says, I have remorse for having brushed him off like that. So now the Gemara says, Isal kadaitach yaspun tanan, amaylo tarfim imishabdi, and if you're going to tell me that it's a gift, why then should a son, the unborn son, not be able to collect from encumbered property? Elishmami no yarsum tanan. So this is the conclusion of this brisa. It must be, says Rabbi, that the correct girsa is that it is acting as a Yerusha, and therefore I am paskening like Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka, Nasan Habavli was correct. Now the Gemara says at the conclusion of this whole brisa, let's think about this for a second. Man shamas le di'islei haisvar Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka. The only person who would hold that a father has a right to reapportion the estate, to give one son out of his other sons more than his fair share, is Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka, ushma mina afilu bibari. And when does that take place in the example of Benin Dichrin? It's taking place on the day of marriage. The day of marriage. The guy's not on his deathbed when he's getting married, right? So clearly, this answers our question. This proves that when Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka is holding of that a father has a right to reapportion the estate and redistribute it unevenly, it's true even as a bari, not just as a shchiv meira. Now that answers our question. But now we're going to go back to this whole discussion and really sort of pick apart this whole back and forth between us and Habavli and Rebbe. Amar le Rav Papa le Abaya, bein laman do Amar Yaskun and bein laman do Amar Yarson, ha'ein adam makna davar shelo bala olam. He says, I don't understand. Regardless of whether this guarantee that is made to his new bride is done as a gift or if it's done as a Yerusha, I don't understand how it can work. A person cannot give a gift that is not yet in existence. In other words, va'afilu l'Reb Meir da'amar adam makna davar shelo bala olam hanimili lidavar sheyeshno ba'olam aval lidavar she'ena ba'olam lo. He says, I'm not talking about the commodities that are existent. I'm talking about the recipient of the gift. You cannot give a gift or a Yerusha to someone who is currently not alive. How can a man make a conditional statement in a ksuva and basically stipulate that an unborn human being, a human being that does not yet exist, shall receive either a larger part of the Yerusha or shall receive a gift? How does that work? No one holds that works. So how is that possible? So 1 second. So that's going to be the Gemara's answer. Ella Tanai based in shiny. So the answer is that it's a Tanai based in, meaning like Mr. Friedman is suggesting, based in has the authority using, like the Rashbam says, using the koach of Hefker based in Hefker, they can actually take something that legally belongs to the testator and transfer and to the other heirs and transfer it to this fellow, to this unborn child after he's born. They have the power to do that because the Beis Din's authorization exceeds the normal methods of kinyan. But if that's the case, the Gemara says, but hachanami tanai Beis Din shiny. Well, then let's go back to our original issue. We wanted to prove that Rebbe was paskening like Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka, but that's not necessarily so. Maybe even though Rebbe says that it's working using the mechanism of Yerusha, but it's not the normative mechanism of Yerusha, because that only works according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka. But here the reason it works is even the Chachamim would agree that it works. Why? Because of Tanai Beis Din, because of the special edict of the Beis Din that says that this is going to happen despite the fact that normally it doesn't work. So our whole question is, what's Reb Nassan's raya that Rebbe is paskin like Reb Yochanan ben Baroka? Maybe the whole reason why it works is because of a special Tanai Beis Din. So Amar Lei Mishum de Kamapik La Beloshon Yarson. So Abaya's response is, I'll tell you why Reb Nassan still feels justified in proving that Rebbe is going like Reb Yochanan ben Baroka, because he used the language of Yarson, which means inherit. And the inheritance is a word which implies that it's employing the mechanism of inheritance. And the only person who holds that such a mechanism works to reapportion the inheritance is Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka. If it was working as an exceptional Tanai Beis Din, then Rebbe would not have used the word Yarson. So that's the proof that he's trying, that's where he's trying to prove it from.
Also,
But
there is the question, you cannot give him maton unborn or
to an unborn child. But the Gemara is saying that you can't give a Yerusha to an unborn child either. No, you can. You're trying to stipulate that he's going to inherit more. Even if you hold like Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka, if he's not alive, how can you do that? Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka only says you can do that to a child who's alive. You can't do it to an unborn child. So the point that Abai is trying to make is he answers the question by saying, Rebbe must be paskening like Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka, otherwise he would not have used the verb yarsun, which means an inheritance. He would have used another word. The fact that he uses that word means he's employing the shita of Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka to say how this unborn child who will eventually be born will inherit more than his normal portion. But Hadar Amar Abaya Lav Milsihi Da Amri. But then Abaya retracted and he says, you know what, that argument that I just presented, that the fact that he uses the language of Yarson proves that he holds like Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka, is actually not correct. And I'll prove it to you. That nan lo kasav la benin nukvan de yahavyan lichiminoi, yahavyan yasvan bevesi v'yitzanon menichsoi ad tilakhan leguvrin chayev shutanai bezdin. So there's the very next Mishnah, the adjacent Mishnah, in this whole discussion in Maseches Ksuvas, says that there are two accommodations that the rabbis made in a woman's ksuva. One, we just discussed before, is called ksuvas benin dichrin, which means that a husband says, I guarantee to my new bride that whatever sons you and I have together, those sons above and beyond the normal portion of their Yerusha will also get the ksuva. But there's a second accommodation that the rabbis made, again, to incentivize a man to marry off his daughter, and he shouldn't be worried that his progeny will not be taken care of, is that the husband also must guarantee in the ksuva the following. He says, I've taken care of the sons that you and I will have together, but I also have to take care of the daughters that you and I will have together. That's called ksuvas benin nukvan, which is the following accommodation. That if I survive you, and I absorb your ksuva, then not only will I guarantee that the sons that you and I have will inherit the ksuva, but also the daughters that you and I have, I guarantee that they will be provided for after I die until they get married. They will be able to live off of the estate until I get married. Now, normally that would not be the halacha. Normally, what?
They get married.
What?
Until the daughters
until the daughters get married. Normally, the halacha would be is if once the father dies, the sons get all of the inheritance, and the daughters are basically told to take a walk. Right. So the special accommodation is that no, I guarantee that I will take care of whatever daughters you and I have together. I guarantee that they will be provided for until they get married. So the Gemara now says, "V'hava lazeh b'matana v'lazeh b'yerusha v'chol lazeh b'yerusha v'lazeh b'matana afilu rabbanan mod." And the Gemara Abaya basically makes the following statement. He says, "This is not a raya that, therefore, there is no raya that Rebbe is subscribing to Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka, because here there is a dual takana. It's a takana that has two parts to it. Part one is that the sons will inherit the ksuva above and beyond their normal share. And takana number two is that the daughters are given as a gift all mizonos, all provisions for years until they get married. Now, once the same Beis Din is making a takana that is two-part, and one part is a gift and one part is a Yerusha, even the Chachamim, who argue normally with Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka and dispute the ability for a father to reapportion the estate, would agree in this situation. Why? Because since in this situation it's clearly manifest that he's not trying to manipulate the Yerusha, but is rather trying to just make accommodations for his children that he has from this wife, it doesn't have the taint of reapportioning the Yerusha. So therefore, since at least a part of the takana involves a gift, so that demonstrates that the Yerusha portion as well is not a manipulation of Torah law, but rather it is an attempt to protect the children. So therefore, there's no raya that Rebbe holds like Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka just because he uses the word yarsun, because it's being done in concert with a matana that is being given to the daughters. So Amrle Rav Nechumi v'ista Omer Rav Chananya bar Minyumi le'Abaya. So one of these rabbis challenges Abaya and he says, "Mimai debechad beidina iskon dilma betray beidina iskon." He says, "Wait a minute. How do you know that these two takanas were instituted by the same Beis Din. Maybe they were instituted by two different Batei Din. One Beis Din made the takana that the male sons, the sons will inherit above and beyond their normal portion, they'll get the ksuva. And a later Beis Din made a takana that the daughters will get mizonos. Just because one takana has to do with Yerusha, one takana has to do with matana, doesn't mean that you can conglomerate them together to adduce that the Chachamim would agree with this. Maybe they were done separately, in which case they can only be done if you hold like Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka. So Abaya's response is, Lo salka daitach, the Ketani Reisha, Zemedrish Dorish Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah lifnei Chachamim bekerem biyavna. Because the Brisa says, or the Reisha of the Mishnah says, that the following was expounded by Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah in front of the Chachamim in the yeshiva in Yavna. What did he say? That Habanim Yirshu v'Habanos Yazunu. Mahabanim einon Yorshim elo la'achar misas avihem, af banos lo Yazunu elo la'achar misas avihem. And the takana was that just like the sons only receive their Yerusha portion of the ksuva after their father dies, so too the daughters are only entitled to the mizonos, the sustenance, after the father dies. Meaning that as long as the father is alive, whatever obligations he has financially to his daughters are not within the realm of matana. He doesn't have to fulfill his obligation to sustain the daughters as if, let's say, they're above a certain age. He doesn't have to sustain them any longer. It's only upon his death that he has an obligation for them to be sustained from his estate. So Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah is connecting the two together. Now, Iyomart bishlam bechad beidina iskon haina dialfinan takana men takana. Ela Iyomart betrei beidina iskon heicha yalfinan takana mitakana. And that's the proof that these two takanas were made in tandem by the same Beis Din. Because if they were made by two separate Batei Din, what right does Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah to have to connect the two together and say that just like the takana for sons was only for post-mortem awards, so too the takana for the daughters was for post-mortem awards? Mehecha teisi, how do you know that? If it was made by two separate Batei Din, maybe they made two separate takanas where the parameters are totally different. So the Gemara says that's not a good argument, because Dilma la'olam emelacha betrei beidina iskon u beidina basra token ke beidina kama. But maybe they were made by two separate Batei Din, and all that Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah is suggesting is that the first takana was made for sons as a Yerusha, that they inherit the ksuva after their father dies, like Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka, because then it's a standalone takana having to do with Yerusha, which can only go like Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka. And then a later Beis Din said, listen, you took care of the sons, but you didn't take care of the daughters. We've got to take care of the daughters as well. And then they reflected back on the original takan, and they said, well, listen, even though we're a separate Beis Din, and we can structure the deal any way we want, but let's structure it so that it conforms to the same parameters as the original Beis Din. So just because Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah compares the two takanas does not necessarily mean that they were made by the same Beis Din. And then the Gemara says, Ki heichi de lo tiksha takanta atakanta. And it not only does it stand to reason that these were two separate takanas, but it's logical to conclude that they were two separate takanas, because otherwise they would in some way contradict each other. Now, what does that mean? Rabbeinu Gershom explains that what it means is, if these two takanas were made simultaneously by the same Beis Din, then why did they use the language of inheritance for the sons and gift for the daughters? There should have been greater consistency among the two takanas if they were made at the same time by one Beis Din. So therefore the Gemara says, if anything, there's a greater indication that they were made by two separate Batei Din at two separate times. The original takana was only for the sons. The second takana was made perhaps years later to accommodate the daughters. And therefore, using this kind of logic, we return back to our original statement of Nasan Habavli, that Rebbe is paskening like Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka, because if at the end of the day there was a standalone takana that the sons inherit more than their fair portion, it got nothing to do with gifts, it's only a Yerusha kind of apportionment, then that clearly goes like Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka, and that concludes our discussion. Okay, let us go on.
So what's the language in the Ksuba?
So the Gemara itself had given us the language. The language was Benin dichrin de yahavyin leich minoi all male sons, or sons that you have from me, that you give birth to from, and I'm the father, inun yarsun kesef ksuvasayich yoiser al chulkehon de'im achuhom. They shall inherit the ksuva above and beyond the normal portion that they will get. That's right. It says yarsun. Rabbi initially had said, well, you have to change the girsa to yaspun, but he said that's not right. Really, it is yarsun. That's for sons. And for daughters, it's a different lashon. It says that, and this is, I'm just reading from the Gemara on Amud Aleph. B'ninukvan diyahabin lichi minoi yahavyon yasvan bebesi v'yidzanan minichsoi adis tilachan leguvern. That any daughters that you and I have together, after my death, they will live in my home and be sustained from my assets. That's clearly a matana, even though it doesn't say the language of matana, but by implication, since daughters don't inherit, it's a language of matana implicitly. Okay, let us go weiter. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, Hakoisev kol nechasav liishto lo asa ela apatropa. Now this statement is very jarring because it is totally in contradiction with contemporary law about rules of inheritance. When a man writes a will and he dies before his wife, who inherits his estate in common law, in, I guess, Canadian or American law? The wife gets it, generally. So the Gemara says that's not true. Gemara says, no, the sons get the inheritance, and the wife has a right to live off of the estate until such time as she chooses to remarry. Okay? So that's the general halacha throughout Maseches Ksuvis, and it's being repeated here. The Gemara holds so much of this svara that this is the norm so much that it says as follows: what if a man explicitly writes a will and says, "I hereby give to my wife, upon my death, she will get my entire estate as a matan"? So the Gemara says a man would never do that. Why would a person deny his heirs of their rightful estate and give it to his wife? That's crazy, right? A person would never do that.
She talked him into it.
Right, that's right. And so therefore, you know what we assume? We assume it's not to be taken literally, and really what he means to say is, my children are my heirs, but I want them to show proper kavod to my wife, and therefore I am making her the trustee on my estate, the custodian of my estate. She is in charge of apportioning to the heirs the Yerusha that they are entitled to. That's how it's a huge chiddush. Basically, he says explicitly, I am gifting my wife my estate upon my death. And we say, nah, that's not what you meant. You really meant to say that she's the executor on the estate. Right, what's the difference between a trustee and an executor? Is there a difference?
Same idea.
It's the same. It's pretty much the same idea, right? But basically, she is the executor or the trustee on the estate. That's what you mean to say. And the reason why you wrote it is because if she has nothing to do with dividing the estate, the kids will not show her proper derech eretz. They'll say, we don't need mom anymore. She made us clean our room all the time. She made us tuck in our shirts. What do we have to show her kavod anymore? And they're not going to we want mom to be, you have to show kavod and derech eretz to your mother, and so therefore she's the executor on the estate. Okay.
It's interesting, in Canadian law, the executor is entitled to a payment.
Yes, correct.
So
I'm not sure whether that would be the case over here. So now the Gemara says, Pshita beno hagadol lo aso ela apotropos. And the Gemara says this is not only true when you write that about your wife, but it's also true, we assume it's true when you write that about your eldest son. That when you say he gets the whole estate, contrary to what Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka had said, we assume that when you write this to your eldest son, what you mean to say is, that not that he gets everything, but that he's the executor. And the reason is because we assume that what you want is for the other brothers to show proper derech eretz to their older brother, because it's a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah for everyone to respect the older brother. Now, bino hakatan mai. But now the Gemara's question is, what's the halacha if you take the youngest of the children there's not so much of a svara to say that I want all my kids to show derech eretz to my youngest child. So Itmar Rav Chaniloi Bar Idi Omar Shmuel Afilu B'no Katan Hamutul Ba'arisa. He says no. Sometimes a father will want the brothers to show kavod even to the youngest of children, and even if that child is in a crib, is still an infant, there's still an assumption that the father just wants to appoint that child as the apotropos, as the executor or the trustee, and not as the sole heir. And the reason why a father would do that, who knows? Maybe he felt maybe this child would be rejected by the other brothers, it's a different mother, or whatever it is. He wants that child to have elevated status for whatever reason. But we reinterpret his message in the will as not that he's giving everything to that child, but rather that the child is the executor. Now, pshita b'no va'acher, acher b'matana uvno apotropos. So the Gemara then says, okay, so what's clear now is that whichever son it is, if you make a son and you say he's the exclusive heir, you mean to say that he's the apotropos, he's the executor, and not that he gets everything. But if you write it to a complete stranger who's not related, if you say my friend Bob is going to get everything, there's no way to reinterpret that. There's no way to reinterpret, well, I really meant for Bob to be the executor, and I want my sons to show him derech eretz. Who cares? Why would anyone in their right mind want his sons to show proper derech eretz to Bob? Unless, I guess, you can make an argument. But here the Gemara assumes that there's no argument to be made. And so therefore, if the person is a total non-relative, there's no other way to interpret it as it's just that it's a matana, and he's given away all of his estate to a friend instead of his children. Skip the parentheses. Ishto arusa v'ishto grusha b'matana. The next thing, and we're going to see 5 cases where there's a bit of a gray area. The first 2 is, what if a man has a fiancée, she's betrothed to him, but he has not consummated the marriage yet, they're not living together. And what if a man has a divorcee, he's divorced his wife. In both of those cases, that woman is also treated like a non-relative. And therefore, when he says that she is getting everything, that is to be taken literally, and she becomes the owner of the entire estate to the exclusion of the children. But now the question is raised, here's some other gray areas. Bas etzel habonim, v'isha etzel ha'achim, v'isha etzel b'nei ha'ba'al mahu. So we have 3 other questions, in addition to the first 2, which are a fiancé and a divorcee. Now I have 3 more questions. What about if a father says, my daughter is the sole inheritor to the exclusion of all my sons? Does he mean to say that I'm giving her as a matana everything, and therefore the sons get nothing? Or does he mean to make her an apotropos, the executor? Next question. What about a man who has no children, and he just has a wife? So when he dies, really his wife does not inherit him. Who inherits him? His brothers. So when he says, I want my wife to get everything, what does he mean in that case? Does he mean that his wife gets everything, or does he mean that she's the executor of my brother's estate because I want them to show her proper kavod? And the final question, gray area number 5, is Isha Eitzel B'nei Ha'Ba'al Mahu. What about a woman who is the guy's second wife? He doesn't have any kids with her, and he has children from a prior marriage. And he says, I want my new wife to get everything, right? So is that, like Anna Nicole Smith, is that to the exclusion that she gets everything and the sons get nothing? Or does he merely mean to make her an executor so that his sons should show her derech eretz? Now you could argue, why do they need to show her derech eretz? Why didn't they show her covered? That's not their mother. The answer is perhaps a man wants them to honor his wife because that shows him honor, like we learn in other Gemaras. So Amar Ravina Mishmei Derava Bekule Lokanu Lebar Meishto Arusa Veishto Gerusha. So Ravina says in the last 3 issues that you asked, in all of those cases we assume that the woman is an apotropos. By the case of the daughter, by the case of the wife vis-a-vis the guy's brothers, and by the case of the second wife who has no children vis-a-vis the stepchildren, In all of those cases, we assume that she's an apotropos, that she's an executor, and it's only in cases 1 and 2, where it's his fiancée or divorcee, where she's a total non-relative, do we say that he means it as an out-and-out gift. But Rav Avira Mishmei de Rava Amar Bekulu Kani Labar Meha Isha Eitzel Ha'achin V'Isha Eitzel B'nei Habal. He has just one slight difference, and he quotes Rava differently. He says, in all of those 5 cases, it is an out-and-out gift to the woman, except for 2 cases, where a man says to his wife, when he doesn't have any children, you're going to get everything. He means for her to be the executor for his brothers. And the Isha Eitzel B'nei Habal, and in a case where where it's his second wife and he has no kids from her, and he wants her to be an executor for his son's estate so that they will show her proper cover. So what's the machlokas? They're both quoting Rava. Ravina quotes Rava and Rav Avira quotes Rava. They're really only arguing in one case. Ubas Eitzel Habanim. When it comes to a daughter who is going to, where a father says, I want my daughter to get everything, that's the only case where they disagree. They all agree in all of the other cases that the first 2 cases is that it's a gift. The last 2 cases is that she's a custodian or an executor. The only case where they disagree is where a man says, I want my daughter to be the sole heir. What does he mean to say? Is he giving her the whole estate, or does he want her to be an executor for the brothers? That's where there's a machlokas